Hi, everyone. If you are watching this conversation, the likelihood is that you are an introvert. Statistics show that 30 to 50% of the population in the Western world consists of introverts. So, welcome to this conversation between myself, Selena Tonken, and Dr. Peter Stapleton. And we wrote a book, Emotional Freedom Techniques for Introverts. So, in this conversation, we'll talk about emotional freedom techniques and we'll talk about introverts and why this technique is so amazing for us introverts. I am high performance coach for ambitious introverts. I'm true blue introvert and love everything to do with introverts. And now I'll introduce Dr. Peter Stapleton. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Selena. I'm an introvert too. People.
So that's why we wrote the book, yes. So just
we did.
Anything else, Dr. Peter Stapleton is associate professor at Bond University, and she's also the leading authority in the world, a leading researcher in the world in all things to do with emotional freedom techniques. So the perfect person to talk about emotional freedom techniques. And she wrote yet another book, science behind the science behind the tapping.
Yeah, I think introverts write the best books, don't we, Selena? We have time to write books.
We do, and you are such a prolific book writer. Actually, it was never on my bucket list to write a book until you came up with the idea that we write EFT for introverts. So can I ask you, what actually inspired you to suggest that we do that?
Yeah, I guess because I live quite a public life, so you know that, but anyone listening, as a lecturer or even presenting at conferences and things like that, people I think assume that you are an extrovert when you do that kind of thing. And I always tell people, no, I'm a true blue introvert as well, and much prefer, to have my own time and things like that. So maybe almost kind of clearing up a little bit of what introversion means, but also how you can actually, because, and we know because we wrote the book together, that a lot of the research says a lot of the amazing, great ideas and inventions worldwide come from introverts. But often what happens is they don't take that step forward to sort of step into the limelight, to share those things that they have created because of maybe anxiety or blocks. So I think for you and I in those conversations years ago, what? We should write a book. We should write a book about how tapping can actually work for introverts. So ultimately, that's where it came from. But I think it's such a beautiful self-applied stress tool that can really help introverts step into their power and shine, because they have so many good ideas.
And that's what the book is about, how to apply this easy, effective tool. So just to talk about what introversion is. Introvert is a temperament, just like extroversion is a temperament. They're not better or worse than each other. They just different. So
that's right.
Yeah, we introverts, we have a very active nervous system, very active brain. So, our nervous system gets easily stimulated, overstimulated with the noise of the world, social situations, with the music at work, with the meetings, So we need to withdraw in solitude to recharge our batteries. Extroverts, on the other hand, they thrive on a neurotransmitter called dopamine, and dopamine pulls extroverts to be out in the noisy world, because that's how they recharge their batteries. And that's the only difference, the basic difference. How our temperament determines actually how we respond to the world. So what happens here in the Western world is there's a bias towards extroverts. And I love the book Quiet. And
I love that book. Yes. Yeah.
amazing book. It started the revolution for us introverts here in the Western world. And Susan says in her book that introverts are treated as second-class citizens actually in the Western world. So that's why I'm so passionate. You know, I'm so happy that we wrote this book to actually empower introverts to come out of their shell and appreciate who they really are, embrace who they really are. And
absolutely.
EFT is perfect tool for that. So since you are the leading authority in EFT, tell us a bit more about it. Tell us what makes it credible.
Yeah, sure. So EFT, you mentioned, Selena, stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It has become known as tapping, just because that's an easy way for people to describe the technique itself. So essentially it's tapping on pressure points on the body like we would use in acupuncture, but instead of using a needle, we just use a 2-finger tapping process to stimulate the acupressure points. So there's some on the face, top part of the body. And it's been around for about 40 years. So it's not new, even though it might be new to somebody who's just listening for the first time. Most people are familiar with acupuncture worldwide, but just the tapping on an acupressure point while focusing on what your issue is really the key ingredients. Now, it makes it a little bit different to traditional talk therapies that might try and reframe a person's problem or distress or try to think of it with new meaning. Tapping actually asks people to become engaged with what their problem is and actually feel the distress that might be going on, but then at the same time do the tapping technique. So research has shown, and we have now over 130 clinical trials run on EFT worldwide. So it's growing. Every time I look, it actually is increasing. That tapping on these pressure points definitely sends a message back to the stress center in the brain, the amygdala, and tells it to calm down. So whether you're tapping on a food craving, which has been our research, or a depressed feeling, or an angry feeling, or an addiction, or, the full gamut, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's having the same effect at a stress level, which is why we say, look, it's a stress reduction technique. It can be used for a lot of different things because stress is in a lot of different areas. So sometimes people kind of go, how can it work for so many different things? And the only thing to kind of keep in mind is that the stress response and cortisol in the body as a hormone is present in a lot of issues. So if we reduce that stress response, and we have actually done saliva trials where we've tested cortisol, and 1 hour of tapping results in a 43% reduction in cortisol. So that's our latest research that is about to be published here from Bonn University. That 1 hour of tapping, 43% reduction in cortisol physically. So that's fantastic. That's amazing. So that's really telling us it reduces stress. That's what this is all about. So we can apply it to a lot of things. And like you asked, what's the evidence and research? We meet the criteria. EFT meets the criteria for the APA Division 12 Task Force guidelines on what is an evidence-based therapy. So EFT meets those, and there is a paper Dr. Dawson Church wrote showing how tapping meets those guidelines as an evidence-based approach. It's certainly been accepted worldwide in many areas now. So the VA in America have actually approved it as a safe therapy for PTSD. NICE, the NICE in the UK has actually approved it worthy of government funding because there's enough research for it. Canadian Psychotherapy Association has actually approved it for all their psychotherapists to use. And I, only a couple of weeks ago here in Australia, the Australian Allied Health Awards awarded me Psychologist of the Year because of the EFT research. So to me, it was much bigger recognition of EFT than it is me as a person, because it's EFT that they're recognizing all the research, because I don't do anything else. That's all I do. So that has just been an amazing recognition here in Australia too, that the research is building. It's hard to ignore, and we've done brain scan studies, and we've got another one coming up early next year where we're showing changes in the brain. So fMRI studies showing changes in the brain after just 4 weeks of tapping, which is incredible.
Yeah. The evidence is there, isn't it? For all those skeptics. I used to be a skeptic. I thought when
Did you?
I was like, what is this?
It's a bit weird. Yeah, it's a bit weird.
When you see it first time, it does look a bit weird. However, what I love about it also, you can utilize it with trained EFT practitioner to deal with issues like post-traumatic stress disorder, physical pain. You don't have to be an expert to apply it. You can apply it as a first aid. You know, if you're a busy executive, you can apply it daily, consistently, to keep the stress level down and maintain an optimal level of energy for yourself as an introvert. Now, the actual, the simplest version of the technique consists of 3 steps, and you can take a quick break, takes 2 minutes to de-stress. However, the amazing thing about EFT is that you can use it anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances, because there's some discrete points on our body where we can tap, and you can be actually at a meeting, or you can be in a situation surrounded by people, and you can tap and de-stress, and no one needs to know.
True.
Yes, that's why it's so good. So who is it good for, this book, our book, Peter? Who would you recommend it to? I would say all introverts go and buy it. And
absolutely.
And extroverts.
Yeah.
Introvert and you don't understand them, go and buy the book. You will understand them. But who else would you recommend it to?
Yeah, I would say, like, I think the nature of our book even would be easily understood by teenagers. So, whilst the title of the book is EFT for Introverts, and obviously that might appeal to an introvert to pick up because it's on the title, even teenagers that are still developing personality and traits and things like that, because it's easy to understand. And chapter 2 absolutely outlines how to do the tapping technique very easily. And it's self-applied, as you said, so you can just start to have a go as soon as you learn how to do it. So you're not going to make anything worse necessarily. You're just going to tap on exactly what it says to do. So I think I agree with you, like full spectrum of the population out there. Extroverts will learn maybe about someone in their life, a family member or their partner who is an introvert, and what that means, that it's not a flaw, like you said earlier. It's not a second-class citizen. It's just that's their preference of relating in the world and conserving energy to do something again the next day. Whereas extroverts are the opposite. And one of my sisters is an extrovert, so I've lived with an extrovert my whole life. And it's great for them to understand too what it means for us, and for us, obviously, to understand them. So I think, yes, anybody would be able to pick this up, even if they were brand new to tapping, learn the tapping technique, and then definitely if you knew that you were, an introvert or even anxious at some level, or you wanted to learn how to use it for stress, this is absolutely a book that will help with that as well.
Great. And like you said, Peter, it's not a flaw. Introversion is temperament. It's not a flaw. And we often collapse shyness with introversion, when in fact shyness is a learned behavior, and many extroverts actually are shy. And if you are an introvert, be proud. You're in a great company. You're like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Barack Obama, some of the leading, most influential figures in the world actually are self-proclaimed introverts. And like we both said, it's good for extroverts to actually pick up this book. There's often so much conflict in partnership where they're extroverts and introverts living together in romantic partnership, in marriage. So for us introverts, the idea of fun on Friday evening is put the pajamas on, get the book.
Go to bed by 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, it could be late. And for an extrovert, a good idea of fun is you put your best clothes on Friday night and you go out and party. So you can see how that can create conflicts. And this is not about us introverts versus extroverts. It's about understanding each other, and not labeling, but understanding each other, how we operate, so we have harmony in our life. So go and get the book. You can get it on Amazon. It's called Emotional Freedom Technique, so EFT for Introverts. Anything else that we need to add, Peter? Or
No, I think, obviously, and you showed before, thank you, that if people did want to know more about how does this work? The science behind it. What's all the research? That's what that other book. So this my new book out this year, The Science Behind Tapping. So if people wanted to be curious, that book will also in one chapter teach you how to do it. So that's on the same Hay House website. So our book obviously is a Kindle version on Amazon, but if people want a hard copy, they can buy that from Hay House. So there is a paperback version of EFT for Introverts. And I think, pretty much we've probably covered the main things that I believe, and you and I are perfect examples of this, that when introverts learn to calm their nervous system, it doesn't change that you're an introvert, but it allows you to take your ideas that you do have in your creative moments and step out there and be comfortable enough to show the world. And then you can retreat back into the doona and, sit in the bedroom in the quiet office, and then until you're ready to come out again. But something like tapping, I think, allows people to calm themselves to a point where they can share exactly who they are and maybe what they've created or, an idea that they've got and cope with that. And that to me is the gift. I would have absolutely been diagnosed as a young teenager with generalized anxiety disorder. And I'm really honest about that. I was the eldest of four. Well, I still am, but I was shy as well. So I had shyness in there, but I was anxious. I didn't know what that meant. And I found tapping in my early 20s through obviously my client work. And so I've been tapping for about 18 years. And if people meet me now for the first time, they would never say that I'm an anxious person. And I'm not. I don't identify that with that. But I think what has happened is I've just calmed my nervous system over all these years. And then people laugh when they realize I'm an introvert because I'm like, I'm still an introvert. I still want to go home on a Friday night and, put Better Homes and Gardens on and, sit on the lounge. So, I just think it's such a beautiful tool. And I thank my lucky stars as to my colleague who did first let me know about tapping. And he did. He said, I've got this weird thing, but I think it works. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But, have a look at where we've come. And I think anyone out there that's looking for a way to easily calm themselves down, I've not come across anything better than tapping.
Yeah. So we should say thank you to your colleague from for putting you on to EFT, and I'm just so grateful that you are in Australia. Like so much good stuff comes from other countries, but you are in Australia and so easily accessible. And my husband too calls me pretend introvert.
Pretend.
because we go to a party and I can talk like
yes, so can I.
We introverts are not social. I love people and I can talk to people, but it's just that at one stage I need to go home, most probably earlier than anyone, and I used to make myself wrong for that. I was like, why am I a recluse that I need to go home? I didn't understand who I am as an introvert. And my aim with our book is that introverts embrace their introversion. I love this quote. It is the chiefest point of happiness that a man is willing to be what he is. And with tapping, you can actually, de-stress your nervous system and tap into your genius as an introvert. So go and get
absolutely. Fantastic. Love it. Thank you, Selena.
Okay, talk soon. Bye.
Bye.